Hola, everybody. Welcome back to the Starbright podcast. This is episode 9, and I'll mention the title again in a minute here. Just want to once again, always thanking Starlight for allowing us to use her Discord to host this podcast. And if you feel like chatting at us live and talking with us, there should be a link in the description on the YouTube that you will probably end up watching this on in the future if you're watching this in the future. If you are watching this now, you can find me on YouTube and under the Starbright podcast, and you'll find a link there in the description. Come join us on the Discord or chat with me on Twitch or Kick or YouTube or anywhere really where this is going out. And we'll chat back if I happen to see it, which I probably will. So today's episode, what I kind of skipped over. Actually, Mouse, you want to tell us what we're doing today?
I'm
just gonna throw it right straight to you. That's right.
So we are doing monster fucking today, mainly because we wanted to fuck with Will.
Yep, monster fucking season. Let's go.
No, you're right. It has nothing to do with Mouse's own inclinations.
Oh. Nope. Not even a little. She heard the horror. We heard the horror in Will's voice, and we knew that this is what we had to do.
She just randomly was Googling sexy oogie boogie for fun. That had nothing to do with her inclinations at all.
Daddy oogie
boogie for me. I know Drow heard this. Did he not say he was going to dress up as sexy?
He did. He even said something about it on your page, actually, as a comment, too.
I said I dress as sexy oogie boogie in response to something Mouse had already posted about monster fucking. Okay, I didn't start this. This wasn't my decision.
This was all you, my guy.
Yeah, this is all response to you. We have just been going down this snowballing path the whole time just because we heard you go when we said monster fucking.
It hurts my self-esteem. I can't live up to it. If we did an episode on like Greeky gods I'd like to fuck, I'd feel the same way. I'm not a Greek god. I'm not that sculpted. I can't fucking like headlock a hydra. You know, it's unrealistic. And monster fuck, I don't have 13 fucking penises on my hands. That's tentacles that I can all use at the same time. It's unrealistic.
Your ideal form once you get all your fingers turned into penises. What was it, Billy Ballencocks?
Yep, that's the name you came up with.
It sure is. When he gets all of his fingers turned into penises, that's going to be his new name. Anyway, we have just been torturing Will all week, and it has been great. So yes, we are covering monster fucking. We were actually looking for a guest speaker. We weren't able to find anyone last minute, so we're going to do our best to cover all of the monster fucking bases, as it were, and see where we end up. This is our Halloween episode and our Friday the 13th episode. We figured we'd just have some fun with it.
Yeah, it's very spooky. Friday the 13th.
Ooh.
Right. There's quite a bit of Jason Voorhees monster fucking stuff out there. I am very confident.
Yep.
Oh, that, yeah. I mean, is he really monster fucking? I mean, he's a monster, but he's a human monster.
You know what I mean? So.
I mean, we were just discussing that a lot of last week, right before we were signing off for the night, we were talking about how there's a different spectrum of monster fucking where there's very humanoid like monsters that you often see. But then there's the other extreme where it's just like a giant ball of tentacles who's like fucking 7 women at once or something.
Correct.
And like outside of Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger, usually when we talk about women who are into monster fucking, it's usually the women are into like the most like are expected to be into like the most crazy things, tentacles, massive monsters, all this kind of fucked up shit, like gangbang by orcs kind of thing. Where when it's men who are into monster fucking, it's like monster musume, where it's the most anthropomorphized versions of things. You know what? That's usually what I've seen.
Sometimes, like a lot of the monster fucking I've seen from like for the male eye has often been extremely humanoid demons or some sort of monster that just has really big tits and it may or may not be a zombie or something. I've seen a lot of that. I was actually giving some thought to monster fucking in general today just because I actually am not super into monster fucking, but I've seen quite a lot of it because people send me a lot of monster fucking videos, honestly.
Because you're into monster. Methinks you doth protest too much.
Look, okay, I had this was like on Reddit like last year. I think I told you guys about this last week. Somebody sent me a video and I was actually impressed that somebody spent this much time compiling every single hentai they could find where the tentacle killed the woman after. And I was like,
Damn.
somebody compiled this one at a time. Like somebody knew enough hentais where the tentacles literally tore apart a woman to actually make it a compilation video.
Yep.
And I was thinking
That's
to myself,
actually impressive.
what kind of person would sit there and dedicate that much time? And I'm like, I've probably met somebody like that in the community, actually.
A master of his art. That's who.
It really is. Like, it's dedication. I can recognize dedication. And that's what I was seeing. I was also a little horrified that, like, that was actually something that somebody hyper-fixated on and made a video about. But then I was like, also,
but then
I've
after
seen
the third time you watched through the 20-minute compilation, you really started to think about it.
My brother and Chris, you think it was only 20 minutes? I have news for you. It was much longer than that. And I was just, like, skipping through it, like, Jesus fucking Christ, that all that is? Literally, this is all it is. And I was horrified, and then I had to sit there and think, like, person. And then I realized, honestly, good for them. Like, that is hard work they put in there. But I was giving some thought to it earlier, and, like, the amount or the spectrum of monster fucking is actually really big, just because there is so much anthropomorphic, near humanoid, and fairly vanilla, monster fucking relationships out there. Then we also get into areas where, like, we are getting into vor, even, for some of this. Like, there's a huge spectrum of monster fucking out there. And it's really interesting because there is just so much to it. And we kind of joke about it because, some of it is pretty funny. I've seen some really, really funny monster fucking out there. But I think part of the appeal of it is there's just so much range and variety. And you are able to kind of, like, disassociate from having to be with a person. So if you have trauma related to past partners, I can see where it could be appealing to people. There's so much range, and there is, like, an element of not having to be with, somebody who is fully human, if that makes sense. What do you guys think?
I guess I can understand that in a way.
I get it completely because, and like, I mean, honestly, like, a lot of us have, different kinks that are, and usually monsters tend to kind of nail, like, a lot of them all at once. So, like, I mean, like, a lot of people have size kinks, for example. Well, you're you're going to be like 5 foot something, then you get a 7 foot monster, and, like, you're done. You're putty in their hands. So, like, there's a lot of different kinks that really kind of fit into it too.
Yeah, there's so much.
Yeah. I guess you're right. I guess you really just, if you don't think about it, I mean, well, we're still talking about monster fucking. It's really, I guess there is a level of, like, all of that involved, the disassociation, the kind of, I guess your degree objectification, right? It's usually not like the monster making love to someone, generally, usually. So there's, like, the degree of that in there too. Like, there's a lot of other things involved, but I think it also just has its own flavor, It's not just because of the other things. It's also some people just really just want to be fucked by a want, like, that danger, that feeling of, like, oh, it's a fucking monster, I think that's also in there as well. It's not just because of the other stuff.
There's a lot of reasons people get into it. Some people are just really into tentacles, and God bless them. That's a whole thing. The history of tentacle porn in itself is really interesting if you get into it.
It is actually. It's very interesting.
Yeah, like the extreme conservative push in Japan following the war that led to tentacle porn being used as a replacement for regular porn. Like, interesting how that started, but, like, a lot of people get really into tentacles because it is so almost impersonal. Being fucked by somebody that is, or being fucked by somebody that is not a dick that is attached to a guy that could hurt you. I could see why a lot of women are into that. If you had trauma with a relationship, that non-human tentacle looks pretty good all of a sudden. I can see where people can get into tentacles. I can see where people get into monsters. I can see where there's a lot of kinks that are really covered within the monster fucking territory. Size.
You're going through kombucha girl right now, where you're thinking about monster fucking, and you're like, nah. Well.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
that's like,
I get it, but like, it's not something I'm super into. But like, also being demi, I don't really find anything sexually attractive that way. So I'm kind of like trying to mentally justify it. Because to me, like, I get it, but also like, I can't because I am demi. So I can't really get it, but I can understand the angle that it's coming from.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
I'm very much pan, and I like, I don't care. So, yeah, and I mean, I have a couple like monster kinks. I won't lie. I mean, but like it's just, I don't know. And then they also like make like Bad Dragon, for example. They make wearables actually. It's actually very interesting.
Bad Dragon, like that was, I know I told this joke last week. It's not really a joke so much as this ongoing trope from my server. There's another server member who, one of his first days in the server, he and I got into an extended discussion about weaponizing Bad Dragon ovipositors into a means of home defense. And this comes up every so often where we're going to use them as like basically super slippery paintball guns. Just pop people with eggs for breaking into the home. And I feel like that would be a lot more of a powerful negotiation technique. You're going to convince somebody not break into their house because it's a lot more humiliating to get shot by an ovipositor with a lubed egg and have to tell everyone that's why you have a black eye. Like, this bitch just had this
about that.
dildo with an egg, and I have no idea what happened. I just woke up covered in slime, covered in circular bruises. I have no idea what happened. You would never be okay in prison again. Never. Imagine being the guy who came in covered in bruises from an ovipositor. I feel like there's no recovering psychologically from that.
It's okay.
Probably not.
I'm not gonna lie. Like some of the dildos and stuff I see on like monster dildos and stuff, I see, like, man, you could literally probably take somebody out with that. I won't lie.
Oh, there's a lot of them that could be used as a weapon.
Look,
you ever have one of those
there are quite a few that can be used as a weapon. You don't have to get into monsters for that to be true.
I know. Old Magnum flashlights that cops fucking used to use. They were trained to use them as weapons. A lot of those are smaller than some of those monster dogs.
Right.
They are. Okay, so I know a lot of size queens, and I speak to a lot of people who create content. Like, I personally don't. I was looking into it for a while, though. For many reasons, I ended up not getting into content creation. Not because I'm against it, just for me, it wasn't the good fit. And it's funny I'm saying good fit when I'm about to talk about, fitting giant dildos and stuff. Anyway, so I was talking to some girls who were super into size queens. They were super into taking the biggest dildos they can. And some of what they were taking, I was like, bro, that is as big as my head. You could give birth to basically a full human head. But like they get a lot of views. Like, this is something people enjoy seeing. Like, they got into this partially because they enjoy it, but also because they really have a market for it.
Listen, I will say, with
non-monster shaped giant dick. Like, I've never seen a dildo that size that was not meant to be a monster.
Because you're not talking the ones that are just like proportionally big. You're talking about the ones that are ill-proportionally wide, that are girthy as fuck. Yes, that you'll never see a massive like chode dildo. There's a funny saying I sometimes like to say, which is that I might not be able to reach the bottom of a tuna can, but I sure can bust out the sides. You'll never see an actual human-looking dildo that looks like that. It's never gonna happen. But
they can also be extremely long and wide, like giant tentacles. I don't know where it all goes.
They do make tentacle ones too.
It's the width that makes that shocking. And I'm not gonna lie to you. There is a lot of people that watch that content for no sexual purpose whatsoever, but just because someone's going to shove something, the width of a fucking basketball up themselves, you know what I mean? It's like for the same purpose that people watch like One Guy, One Jar and like Two Girls, One Guy. It's like, it's the shock factor of it. It's like the, oh my God, this person can do this kind of thing more than I think it is sexual. Well, maybe not more. I'm going to say maybe it's about 50-50. I actually don't know what the numbers on that would be.
A lot of people who are sexually into it. I would argue that there's probably more than you think that are sexually into it, or at least in some way sexually into it. Like maybe they don't want their partner to do it, but they do get off in some way to watching another woman do it. They just, don't necessarily want to be involved. And I think that there is quite a lot of people who are into things that they wouldn't be into in person, but they'll pay to see it online. They get off on it, but they just didn't want to be involved.
That's probably fair.
Like, I'm sure there's quite a lot of people who enjoy watching CNC videos without actually wanting to be in a CNC role play themselves. They wouldn't be comfortable, but they do really get off on watching the videos. And I think that could be said with monster fucking. Like, who is actually going to want to fuck a werewolf? Like, they're probably not.
I don't know if I'd use that. I don't know if I'd use that example.
Well, the
werewolves and vampires. There's a lot of people that want to be fucked by a werewolf or a vampire for real.
So yeah, I think if it actually came to real life, people would be less likely to want to fuck the very dirty werewolf. Not everybody.
I don't know. Does it have to be transformed? What if it's Jacob as he normally is?
For the sake of this argument, yes, it would have to be transformed.
Okay, well,
I mean, that's where you see the whole like werewolf thing. That could be definitely where the primal prey kink plays into too.
And also very much into CNC and breeding, and it covers so many bases.
Exactly.
One that's really big is, of course, the orc breeding. Usually there is an element of, there's usually like trains being run in this point. There's usually CNC elements. There's usually bondage elements. There's definitely, especially with a lot of the orc stuff that I have seen, it definitely seems to be a lot of like cock warming. Things like that are very, very commonly represented. And I was trying to when we discussed doing this podcast, I was like, haha, this is going to be a fun topic. And I had to actually think, like, what are we, like, we have to actually talk about this. And as I was thinking about it, there's just so much to it. It's really, and again, we're getting back to huge here, a huge field. I feel like I'm just really bringing the puns tonight without meaning to.
Yep.
It really is just such a huge topic to cover, and I didn't really think about it when I suggested it, but it really does cover so many bases, so many kinks. There's a lot of arguments to be made about, making it less humanoid, makes it less personal, and I can see where that's very appealing to somebody with a lot of trauma.
See, I actually think so. Let's segue into something more exact, because I think this is a good time for it. Where exactly do you define monster fucking in relation to normal fucking, and in relation to, if you go the other way with it, bestiality? Because like the whole thing with monster fucking is you're thinking it's a sapient creature, right? It's just not human, right? It's alien, but like it can talk, it can think. It's not like you're letting an animal fuck you, right? Because then that's now bestiality that we're talking about, right? Even if it is an alien creature, that's bestiality.
I think there's arguments to be made, because I would argue that a lot of the monster fucking videos we're talking about, like alien, like tentacle creatures, there's also like vine creatures that show up in monster fucking, which are arguably not monsters. They probably don't have a whole lot of sentience besides that, quote, the need to breed. So at what point do we argue that they have sentience? They are willingly doing I would say that they are willingly doing the fucking. They're aware that you are a different species, and they don't care. I don't know. I feel like it's a difficult argument. I think bestiality is taking away the consent of the other animal, specifically an animal who cannot give consent. They are not able to give consent. So I think that's I think the consent line is really where it's important with bestiality versus monster fucking. There is definitely a lot of monster fucking that does include animals. And it can get kind of sketchy, but usually with it's including animals, they're usually animals that have a bit more sentience given to them. There's for whatever reason, they have more sentience than like an animal the zoo would. I think there's I think there's an argument to say like
I think sapience is probably a better argument to be made there than sentience, right? Because sentience just means self-aware, but sapience means it's frame of awareness. Its frame of perspective in that awareness is enough that we can communicate with it in some fashion. Yeah.
Because in monster fucking, generally speaking, the monster is at least the consenting party, even if the person being fucked is not.
True.
So
listen, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but I will say I have heard that same argument being made for bestiality.
I have too, but I think that when it comes to bestiality, you can't actually. This is the same argument we got into when it came to pet play. A pet can't actually consent. Therefore, if you're role playing as a pet, you're almost always into the CNC realm, and that's within humans. An actual animal which cannot agree to consent outside of a scene is not ever going to be able to consent.
Yep. It's true.
So I think we're getting into the weeds there. I think what it really comes down to is consent. Like an animal cannot actually consent. In this argument within monster fucking, we are assuming that the creature involved has already consented in some way. Either they are initiating or that is like the only thing they exist for, therefore it is implied consent. Animals, they can't consent. There is no argument, no world in which an animal can consent to being fucked by a human. It just doesn't happen that way. So there is automatically like a gap there, I would argue. What do you guys think?
You're right.
Oh, you are. I agree.
We got into pet play. We were talking about my issue with pet play is, it's not that I have an issue with pet play, but automatically you're kind of losing your human agency at that point. So for me, it's like automatically entering a CNC space because I've discussed this before. My definition of CNC is very broad. Anything where you have to consent beforehand, you are not consenting in the moment, I would consider a part of the CNC family. And I argue strongly that many monster fucking scenes would fit snugly within CNC because you are not able to consent. You're probably not going to be asked to consent if a giant rock monster is about to fuck you. Like I don't think he's going to give you a chance. He's not going to give you a chance.
Monster.
Yeah, like it's not going to happen. So I argue very strongly that a lot of monster fucking does fall firmly under CNC. Mm-hmm. I know Will and I disagreed on this previously. Like he doesn't necessarily agree with my broad definition of CNC.
Yeah, I just think CNC does have.
I argue that
what would be the way to say it? Like a flavor all on its own.
Yeah, I argue that CNC incorporates anything in which you are consenting in advance and not in the scene, not just prior to the scene. You cannot give consent, nod yes or no during the scene. At this point, you have already given consent, and without the safe word, there is no more room. So I would argue that if you're going, especially if you're doing a IRL monster fucking scene, it is already within the CNC realm because you've already consented and you will not probably be asked within the scene again. So that would be my argument. Like if we're talking like outside of like videos and pornography, once you're bringing monster fucking into a scene, which people do, it is firmly within CNC in my opinion.
Oh, okay. Well, this I'd agree with you completely with because like again, like it's never, that's like part of the whole element, right? Is that the monster, you're not just fucking a monster generally, you're going to be taken by that monster. I'm sure there probably is like soft monster porn out there, where it's not CNC, it's just
I'm positive
there is. Yeah. What is I've seen a lot of from like, what was it, Osmosis Jones, the bad guy from Osmosis Jones, the rough and tumble fucking. Yeah, so I've seen a lot of like sexualizations of him where he'd like romance people.
I have not seen that, but I 100% believe it exists. I don't even have to look. I believe you. That just seems right.
I drew a whole webcomic just about that.
No, that seems on brand. But like I'd argue like a lot of furry stuff, because a lot of furries are anthropomorphic, not necessarily recognizable creatures. It might fall into the realm of monster fucking. People who are super into like being fought over by a herd of werewolves, that's really monster fucking. Kind of furry, kind of monster fucking. Like all the Facebook ads where it's like you're being fought over by a bunch of werewolves who, who's going to be the alpha and take you as his mate. Like that's really getting the monster fucking and furry right there.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah, I feel like Facebook is a gateway to monster fucking. I'm going to die on that hill because they're just advertising it so fucking hard.
I'm sure they would love that comparison.
Meta is the gate. You heard it here first, people. Meta is the gateway to monster fucking.
I don't think you're necessarily wrong. Then again, all the VR experiences, especially the VR porn, I'm sure that's gonna be overrun with that kind of content. If it's not already, if it's not already, I don't know.
I've certainly seen
a lot of people use monstrous avatars in like VR avatar chat.
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah. I've been sharing a record amount more monster fucking stuff just because I'm sharing it to ping you now. And I know Drow has picked up on this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, uh-huh.
I've been sharing so much more than usual just to mess with you at this point.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Now, guess what's happening to my poor feed?
It's a monster fuck. No, you did that to yourself. Don't blame that on me. You didn't have to do any of that.
We discussed this earlier, remember? Do you really think that I'm a brat that isn't going to take harm to myself in order to fuck with you more? Honestly, have you met brats? Of course. I will absolutely deal with more monster fucking stuff on my feed if it means I can fuck with you more. Let's be real.
No, that's true. I mean, it doesn't really bother me all that much, which is, the hallmark of a brat, thinking they're doing something, when they're not, thinking they're being tough when they're not, so it's all right.
We all heard your groan. We all heard it.
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with you.
No, it happened the moment she mentioned monster fucking.
Yeah, because of my own self-esteem, because I don't have fucking 13 dick tentacle hands. That's no matter how much monster content you send me, you can't change that. You're not making me feel any more or less about it.
You know what that boils down to? Sounds like a skill issue. I'm joking, of course. But no, I get it.
Once my sexy Oogie Boogie costume comes in, I know whose house I'm stopping off at first to prove something.
Oh my God.
I can just imagine you lifting the bottom of the sack and you're just showing a little bit of thigh and you're like, is that what you want?
Oh no, I want him fully in that one that I found. I want him in that sexy Oogie Boogie with the tentacle tits that were hanging down.
That's more terrifying than sexy, though.
I guarantee somebody fapped that. I guarantee it.
You're probably right.
I absolutely am certain somebody saw it as a challenge and literally rose to the occasion.
No, man,
wouldn't surprise me.
I can't imagine. I don't want to imagine. I don't want to think about it.
Hear that pause and knew you were thinking about it there.
Only because, again, it's just so unrealistic, and I wish I could live up to it. If only I was an amorphous blob and I could just shapeshift into what I needed to be.
Yeah, that's actually a huge topic again within monster
slimes.
Yeah, slimes. That's a good one.
Well, acidic slimes, specifically the ones that destroy the clothing and nothing else.
Yeah, that's too.
That's a monster I can get behind. That's a monster after my own heart. I am in full support of those kinds of slimes. More of those.
So you are into the monsters that specifically destroy clothing.
Yes. As an exhibitionist, I fully. I mean, I'm not per se a nudist. I mean, who fucking enjoys wearing clothing? Let's be honest. But yeah, I am have a more European opinion when it comes to nudity and clothing.
Same.
Bodies are fucking bodies. It's useless. Sexualizing it for nothing makes no sense to me. They're not sexual inherently, and so less clothing the better. Just in general, just how it is.
On that topic, the amount of times that Meta, the literal gateway to monster fucking, has tried to flag my account for cartoon nipples is way too fucking high.
Stop cartoon nipples. Everything.
No, male cartoon nipples that are technically, even if they were not cartoon, are technically allowed in Facebook. I have gotten so many flags that I've had to actually appeal, I one time posted it was some dumb drawn image of the lead singer from the band Ghost with no shirt. And he had like, just barely drawn pinprick nipples. And it got tagged for female nudity. And I was like, in what fucking world?
Listen, I've watched Meet the Parents, okay? You can milk anything with nipples, okay?
I guess. I don't know. Honestly, that's another thing with Facebook. Monster fucking is a workaround because the AI can't recognize nipples and that shit.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot
point.
on Facebook.
That might have to do with a lot of those images and a lot of those memes coming around.
Yeah,
like specifically
it goes around the sensors because it can't pick up on human genitals. Especially some of the way that anime genitals are drawn. They're specifically drawn in a way that it's going to get around the sensors pretty easily.
Which is actually an incredibly interesting topic. The shift in, the social, or I should say public aspects of like that level of kink. Monster fucking becomes more popular because, social media platforms can't fucking send it. That's so like weirdly niche and interesting.
Yeah, like there's so much more monster fucking on places like Facebook where there's heavy censorship because it gets around the censors. So if you're following certain accounts, most of what you see is going to be vaguely monster centric, at least, because what they're able to post without getting flagged is going to be misshapen cocks and slightly out of normal shape vaginas, and that's what you're gonna see way too much of. And I have seen some very, very obvious fucking gifs, but like they weren't normal shaped genitals, so AI wasn't picking up on them.
Part of it is also because it's considered as art too, because they have a huge they change that rule.
They're so iffy with that.
Yeah, a lot of what I've actually gotten flagged for has been art, and they don't really take it as an argument. If you appeal and go, well, this is art, they will still keep it down most of the time.
Oh,
so
on
the paper, they're saying that it's art, therefore it should be permitted, but it doesn't actually hold up. In fact, one of the things that I've got taken down that stayed down was a piece of art that somebody said was sexual exploitation, but I looked at it and both were fully clothed and the guy was kissing the girl's neck from behind. And that's what got taken down for sexual exploitation. It was clearly drawn artwork, but for whatever reason, whatever bot was scanning it decided it was clearly nudity.
Yeah, well, here's the problem: is that the vast majority of those, even like when you appeal it, they're not looked at by people. They just have a bot that goes and looks at it and just like auto sends you a nope generally to that. So like you're not, even though your argument is correct, like no one, like if you took it to court, and you could always take it to court. If you took it to court, you'd win. You'd win that.
Oh, yeah.
But no one's going to do that, even though the argument is right.
Yeah,
so
it's just not worthwhile. Yeah. So what it comes down to is like Facebook does technically have a rule where art is permitted, but their algorithm isn't able to detect art versus real most of the time. So when it comes down to it, if they decide that, your clearly safe for work image that has nothing to do with titties is pornography, then you're fucked. There's nothing you can do about it. Because they're not going to have a real person look at it anymore. That stopped a long time ago. If you appeal now, they'll just have the bot or the algorithm look at it again. And if they still decide that it's pornography, even if it's a picture of a pizza, you're not getting it back.
Yes, they're going to make fun of my pepperoni nipples.
Yeah. I imagine that this has happened to somebody. I have had some really, on my main account, I've had some really, really bizarre things that I was told that, I lost this post over and I was going to get a 30-day ban. And I'm sitting there like, I have no idea what I even did wrong. Like, they didn't actually tell me which rule I broke. And when I appealed it, I didn't know how to appeal it because I had no idea what I'd actually done wrong. But the bot decided I was wrong, and that's just how it was going to be.
Yeah, so, geez, how dare you, brat, on Facebook?
I didn't even do anything. So yeah,
no, you were unknowingly bratting. Apparently, is what they were trying to tell you.
Bratting all directions. That's my lifestyle, honestly. Just, it's my constant state of being. If you talk to me, there's a chance that I'm going to brat without even realizing I'm bratting because I just say things.
Yep.
And they're usually
at the cost of her
sad
own
jokes.
life insanity for nothing, like what
Honestly,
she's doing to herself right now with monster fucking and me.
Honestly, this is not even the worst thing I've done. Okay, do you have any idea what happens to my my ads when I Google things like sexy oogie boogie?
Oh no.
Any idea what my fucking ads are
Can't
like?
imagine.
Look, I am a kink admin on
no.
You have seen the memes I have made. You have seen pre-cum lip gloss and things like that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think my ads look like?
Oh no.
After sexy oogie boogie? Oof.
You know what? You actually think that I'm not going to, take a little bit of damage to fuck with somebody? You should see what my fucking ads look like after the memes I make, guys, okay? You guys got nothing. You think you're going to dissuade me? You got nothing on my ads at this point because I've Googled the worst shit out there just to make a meme. And then I sit there and just deal with the ramifications for weeks after as my ads slowly go back to normal. And it's fine. Just some light trauma. I had this whole, I had a conversation once about urology with somebody, and I spent weeks getting ads about Peyronie's disease with obvious metaphors for bent dicks, and those were my only ads for 2 weeks. We're just banana pictures, and obviously it was obviously meant to be a metaphor for a curved dick, and I was like, okay,
That's rough.
My ads really just go wild sometimes. Also, the wish ads that I get for weird BDSM wish version sex toys. Yeah.
So
it's a thing.
Well, let's just to follow the format from some of the previous episodes. What are something someone might be into that would fall adjacent to or under monster fucking? They might not know that would put that in that genre.
I was positing that furries could very easily many types of furry porn would likely fall under monster fucking technically. Tentacles. If you aren't aware that that's monster fucking, surprise. It's if you're watching tentacle porn, you're a little bit into monster fucking.
A lot of monster fucking, in my opinion.
If you're into anthropomorphic, humanoid creatures with mutations that, they suddenly have a bunch of dicks sprouting out of them, you're probably into monster fucking. Anything where a human is crossed over with another creature and you're fucking it, it's monster fucking.
Seems right.
Yeah. I'm thinking what else? Monster fucking is such a huge field. A lot of times when we get into size queens, we were talking about, most dildos that you're going to be using to really stretch at a certain point are probably not going to be humanoid.
Past a certain girth, none of them will ever be humanoid.
Yeah. So another thing that I see a lot of is some women will wear things like eggs inside of them, and that's not exactly humanoid, buddy. That's probably getting into monster fucking there. If you're wearing something that's meant to look like it's some sort of monster egg or something, you're really vaguely into monster fucking. That's not something that's going to happen in normal human sex. So at that point, you're kind of getting into monster fucking indirectly, but you're there. Ovipositors, definitely monster fucking.
Yeah, I was gonna say ovipositors are one. I think Drow mentioned one early, primalism. There's a lot of primalism where I'm sure you're imagining in your head that it's like a werewolf or some other kind of monster chasing you. Jason Voorhees.
Yeah,
it's okay. I actually own. Sorry, go.
No, I'm sorry. I was just saying, a lot of horror films, a lot of the serial killers, they're depicted as being inhuman in some way or another. So you're pretty much getting into monster fuck territory there.
Oh yeah, Jason Voorhees, he's essentially dead, but not dead at the same time, and he's essentially immortal.
Yeah. So at that point, we are talking about just anthropomorphic monster fucking.
Yep. Oh, that's monster fucking.
Oh yeah, I
100% agree.
Clear that there is a high amount of vor that includes monster fucking. For those not familiar with vor, do not Google it, please. Do not. If you don't know what it is, be glad. Leave it at that. I have been sent way too much vor in my time.
Yeah, I unfortunately, learned what vor was at a very young age. Like I'm talking like, 4chan message boards.
Yeah, Guro, I think the other one. The one with the that one. I had a guy message me, seemed totally normal, and I was like, well, I should, I'm not going to have too much conversation with this person to figure out like what it is that they're into. Because if they're into something like really crazy, like blackmail kink's a thing, guys. Be careful, watch out for this people. Blackmail kink's a thing. So one of the big red flags I see is if I find out somebody's into blackmail kink, I usually stop talking to them right away because I'm not going to give them anything that they could try to use against me. So I immediately cut those people off. So I was going through this guy's profile, and one of the first things I saw was way more Guro than I ever wanted to see in my life ever, nor should anyone ever have to see. And I'm sitting there just like, I think I'm going to stop talking to this person. Because there's a lot of fantasization about murder and, fucking body parts. And I would argue at a certain point, they're not seeing these people as humanoid, and that could actually really get into monster fucking. And sometimes if you're into Guro being the decapitated or used person, the person who's doing it to you is usually not humanoid. Usually it's like aliens or something. So there's a monster fucking really goes into these really dark territories too. There's a huge spectrum covered between like fairly vanilla anthropomorphic, vampires and werewolves, all the way into this really brutal Guro and vor, and it's really just a massive field. I remembered that I discussed that or mentioned it earlier, never actually got into why I was bringing that up. But a lot of the vor in particular I've seen, a lot of times it is represented by fairly vanilla sex being resulted in the monster then eating the woman.
Yep.
That does come into play a lot in certain hentais. Unfortunately, I've seen way too much of that. If that's your thing, I'm sorry for being so negative about it, but I have been traumatized by things that I did not want to see.
No, I think that's fair.
Not my thing. And I have been sent an absurd amount of vor and Guro in my time. Why people are sending this, I don't know, but I feel like, that's worse than a dick pic.
It's probably one of the least populated areas of kink, only because that's something that, so I do think people do need to recognize that there are like kinks and fetishes that one can practice that you can practice safely in the real world, right? And as extreme as you want to go, that's a lot of things. Like CNC is one big example. A lot of impact play is another big example. Things that have heavy physical repercussions potentially, but as long as it's being practiced safely, you're fine. But things like Guro, you can't. I mean, maybe blood play is the closest thing you can get to that, but you can't practice that safely. So if someone because what's the difference between a kink and a fetish is a fetish is something someone needs, right? And a kink is just something you like to have. So if you fetishize something like Guro, you can't do that safely. And someone who is like that level of obsessed with it and that fetishizes it.
At that point, I usually cut that person off because it's no longer safe for me. As I am a particularly vulnerable woman, I am very high risk for injury and infection and things like that. I cannot put myself in that kind of risk. So yeah, I pretty quickly cut people off if I find out that they are extremely into that kind of thing. Because you're having those thoughts, I cannot guarantee or reason with myself that you will never necessarily act on them, especially given my vulnerable position. So I will just not be in a position where that could happen.
Right.
So that's something I run into a fair amount. IRL, you don't really have these people admitting this stuff to you, so you really don't know what everyone's into around you. But the amount that people volunteer this information online, especially to me now as a kink admin who is very active in posting on social media, people will tell me this, and I'm just like, okay, but here's the thing. This is not something that can be safely practiced. And I kind of feel like really uncomfortable that you're bringing it up to me because this is something that should be between you, your hand, and God, and like not me.
Your hand and God.
It needs to stay there. Because I don't want to be involved in any of that. I really don't want to be the person you're imagining in these situations. So please don't. The fact that you're sharing it with me tells me that you have at least tacitly thought about me in reference to these things, and that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely, which is one of the reasons why I think monster fucking kind of gets a pass, right? Because it's unless someone happens to be, one of the lizard people or, some kind of, slime amorphous blob hybrid masquerading as a human, like you can't actually be a monster and rape someone. So like it's just a fun little kinky thing on the side, much like pet play and stuff. Like it's not real. We all know it's not real, and it can be practiced safely, which makes it
one of those topics where we have to acknowledge there is a much darker side that exists that you do have to be aware of is there. When somebody says they're into monster fucking, they just may mean that they really enjoy the thought of being raped by a vampire and bitten and things like that. Good for them. But there is a non-zero chance that you do have to consider that they may be into monster fucking as in some sort of serious harm being done to one of the parties. And you kind of have to assess, like, at what point is it unsafe? Can it not be practiced safely? And at what point do you want to kind of maybe think about your safety? Because for me, it became a safety thing when people started to suggest to me that, they might be thinking about me in these situations. And I really can't guarantee that nobody would act on that. So for me, if I see that, it's a bit of a red flag for my safety. At a certain point, you kind of have to assess.
Yep, which is probably a really safe way to look at it. It's something everyone should do, and not just limited to, like, people who are into monster fucking. Just in general about like everything. That's why vetting is so important.
Yeah. But in CNC in general, if you find out that the person you're with, has maybe had questionable, maybe they actually did rape somebody, maybe consider, like, is this just CNC that they're into? Or is there, they're just looking for a legal way to actually rape you? Because that could be a thing. And you do have to consider that. If they're sounding like, maybe they're not actually into role play, maybe they really don't care if you're consenting or not. They're just going to take you how they want no matter what. They're probably not into, CNC. They may just be looking for somebody who's going to, be able to not be able to argue in court that they didn't want it because they have a history of being into something like CNC. You do have to be very careful because you can be really victimized if you're not very careful about vetting who you're talking to. You want to make sure you know what somebody's into before you meet up with them and let them touch you in any way.
And that definitely applies to monster fucking, because monster fucking, as we have been over, crosses a lot of those boundaries with things like CNC.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is definitely still there.
That's something I really wanted to talk about tonight, because I started thinking about how much monster fucking I have seen in topics such as war and some really extreme areas of BDSM. When somebody says they're into monster fucking, you don't actually know where they are on that spectrum until you really discuss it. And you want to know where they are on that spectrum. That's something that you really should discuss, because if they're on the fairly vanilla, they're kind of into, being fucked by a werewolf, you're probably fine. If, they're in the party where they really enjoy pornography, where a party is being eaten alive or brutally killed, maybe you talk about that one a little bit more. You want to figure that one out a little bit. See how into it they are. If they're kind of like vaguely like, it's kind of hot, but it's not really my thing. Or if they're like, oh my God, this is my favorite brand of porn, it's going to be a very, very different outcome, at least for me. If that's something that they really can't get off without seeing, probably not going to be a very good, productive relationship if I'm not into having my throat ripped open.
Oh yeah. So we'll jump to usually the last thing we talk about. I think it's be nice to wrap this up a little bit. So what if you think you might be into monster fucking, or if you are into monster fucking, what are some things you can do to engage in that monster fucking activity?
Monster fucking activities, huh?
Yeah. I mean, again, you're gonna be the most experienced on this topic, Mal. So you tell us what are some things to do with monster fucking?
So, I mean, you could do what I did and traumatize everybody around you by Googling sexy oogie boogie and just see where that goes. Honestly, not even the worst thing in the topic I've, accidentally Googled without thinking about the ramifications. I mean, honestly, a lot of dildos that you're going to find are going to be monster fucking. I'm pretty sure it's hard to exist on the internet with at least having come across tentacle porn. Like those are pretty soft areas for somebody to kind of like get into the field, to kind of like dip their toes. From there, you tend to get into much less aesthetically pleasing monsters, and that's where you kind of people either really like that or it's not their thing, and they tend to stick with the quote unquote vanilla side of monster fucking, which is like tentacles and anthropomorphic things. So that's usually where the division starts. But like, if you're just trying to dip your toes, there's a lot of hentai out there. There's a lot of I know there's a lot of subreddits on Reddit where you can find like just general hentai. And hentai in particular is really good for monster fucking porn if you're into that, because they have a lot more freedom with what they're drawing. You can kind of see what you're into and what you're not from that. Also, dildos. If you're thinking you may really want to fuck a monster, you can find all sorts of monster-shaped dildos out there. There's way more than you would ever expect. Some of them do not look like they can be fucked, but I assure you somebody has figured it out.
Yeah, you're very correct on that one.
Yeah. I have seen some where I'm like, I have no idea how somebody used that, but then I really regretted looking it up.
I think one you might have missed that you could probably throw in there is you can also add it into other things, like mentioned primalism again. So primalism, throw that in there. Maybe you're a primal monster. Maybe you're not just a fucking person, and use some of those toys, use some of those tools. Throw that in there,
There's a high amount of people who associate a lot of primal hunting with things like werewolves and vampires, and some things, sometimes there's like a zombie element. It really depends on what you're into already and what you're comfortable adding in, and you can just test the waters and see if that's something that works for you and your partner, or you in particular, or not.
Yep, and then hopefully you'll find that fulfilling.
Yeah.
Or filling.
It's always.
Well, it'll be very filling. It's monster fucking probably.
We have just been going over these puns today. It's been bad. We're really into dad joke territory at this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard to take it completely seriously. It's monster fucking. What do you want from us?
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's very, very easy, no matter what you're into, to incorporate monster fucking if that's what you're trying to add into your sex life. It's very, very easy to find something that you're into that you can associate with monster fucking in some way. There's just so much breadth to the field that there's always something you can throw in there.
Yeah. I would agree with that. You got anything to add to any of this, Trow? Before we figure out next week's topic? Next week, 2 weeks. Next episode's topic, I should say. I'll take that as a no, I guess. That's
sorry, one more time? I didn't catch that question.
Throw into all of this?
No, not really, honestly.
You don't want to secretly admit to your own love for monster fucking?
I mean,
you did.
I'll be honest. Yeah, no, I straight up did. I also have 2 Monster Girl encyclopedias, so.
There we go. That's the depth I was looking for.
That seems on brand. I mean, he literally identifies as a drow. Okay, it's really hard to get into like interspecies BDSM stuff without vaguely getting into monster fucking in some way.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really hard to get into that. So goblins
is definitely a little
yeah,
extreme.
that's oof. There's definitely spider related porn out there too for those who are into that. I'm not, but I have seen some really awful things that have made my fear of spiders a little bit worse.
What arachne and driders, that's a big thing, especially with drow.
Yeah, I have seen what was it? Somebody sent me. They sent me this because they know I don't like spiders, just to freak me out. It was like spider sex where they like lay eggs in the woman's uterus and then she gives birth to live spiders. It was one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen, and they sent it to me because I have a fear of spiders.
That's pretty shitty.
Yeah. Definitely under the monster fucking umbrella. I did not have to think about that today, but now I'm sitting here just like, ugh. Anyway. I was actually going to suggest. Yeah, it's all on me at this point. I definitely did this myself. I actually have a suggestion for next episode.
Okay. What would that be?
We kind of touched on it. Some of the taboo topics within BDSM that we really should not be practicing IRL, that there really aren't a good way to bring in safely to real life practice. And why it's okay to have them, but not to practice them.
All right, actual taboo stuff. Okay, we'll call the next episode taboo then.
Because I think it's really important to acknowledge that within BDSM, there are things that we consider fairly vanilla and normal that are very much so not. We were discussing this earlier. Like, there is a scale for us, and our scale is a little bit broken because, like, in our BDSM community, especially if you're active in the social media area, there's a lot of things that we discuss like it's totally normal. But if you bring it up to a vanilla person, they're going to be horrified. And even with us, with the things that we find taboo, it can be quite extreme for us. But like, because we're so used to this extremity, we don't necessarily appreciate on the spectrum that pretty much everything we're discussing, even the stuff that's pretty vanilla for us, is actually pretty extreme.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
I think it's an interesting scale to discuss. Yeah, that's also kind of something I wanted to discuss within the taboo field, like how outside of the normal we are in general, and like we have to remember that we are scaling up in huge strides of taboo compared to people who are vanilla. Choking is something that is in everything, that is in every discussion. There's almost no BDSM scene that does not include choking in some way. Most of us are, most of the BDSM community is into choking or asphyxiation or something like that. But like, most vanilla people find that to be extreme. And we just don't think about it that way. We just don't see it. And I think it's a really interesting discussion to remember that if that's extreme to them, imagine what a vanilla person would think about Guru.
Imagine thinking having fun is extreme.
Their poor souls.
It'd be a whole new level of trauma.
Yeah, that's a good topic. So yeah, we'll call episode 10 taboo. We'll go over taboo stuff.
That'd be interesting.
So that's been it. If you enjoyed the episode, like and subscribe. Hit us up in the links down below that you'll see on YouTube. Come find it on YouTube. If you're not watching it on YouTube, go look at those links. Join us on Discord. Come chat with us. Give us your feedback, and hope everyone has a good day. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Good night, everybody.
Bye.